Hello and welcome to Power in Mind, the sports psychology podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ceely. Today, my guest is Tommy Matush, a former professional cyclist from the legendary 7-Eleven cycling team, the first American team to ride the Tour de France. Tommy rose through the junior cycling ranks in the Midwest, garnering a second place at the 1986 National Championships, where he got a spot on the coveted 7-Eleven junior team. At age 18, Tommy left the junior ranks and continued with the 7-Eleven team, proving himself as competitive as some of the best seasoned pros in the United States. Following the 1988 Olympic trials, Tommy was selected for the 7-Eleven professional squad and left for Europe, racing against some of the world's top cyclists. After racing in Europe, Tommy returned to the U.S., remaining highly competitive with his natural sprinting ability. He went on to ride with Team Spago, Vic Tanny, and Team Saturn, eventually retiring from professional cycling in 1994. Today, Tommy is as active as ever, competing in cycling and cross-country skiing events and managing the GGGF Gran Fondo, an epic cycling event modeled in the tradition of the famous Italian Gran Fondos. So please, help me in welcoming a man whose passion for sports is only equaled by his obsession to find the perfect bike ride, Tommy Matush. Welcome, Tommy.
Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Sure. How you doing today?
Things are going good. Thank you.
Great. So you're up in Hayward, Wisconsin now? Is that where you are?
Yes, Hayward, Wisconsin, way up in the northwest corner of the state, not too far from Lake Superior.
Got it. And so your event, the GGGF Gran Fondo, starts in Hayward, and it's the event is at the end of August every year. Is that correct?
It is usually the third weekend in August. This year it falls on August 24th.
Got it. So Tommy, I wanted to start out our podcast today. For those who don't know, we did a lot of bike racing together way back in the day as juniors, and lots of great memories. But what I really wanted to focus on today is starting out, I want to ask you a little bit about your career, about some sports psychology, and then I also want to ask you about your Gran Fondo event and basically, why you started that and how that can benefit cycling as well. So I guess my first question for you is, and I'll just speak from experience, we raced a lot together. What I remember about you is your style of racing was very aggressive. And I've been racing a couple of years, and when I met you, I was just honestly astounded at how aggressive your style of racing was. And it was really inspiring. And I wanted to ask you about that. For example, you would attack during races, and then say if you got caught, you would actually counterattack yourself. And and I thought, I guess what I'm wondering is, where did you get that mindset, or where do you think you got that mindset of, say, really creating the race and creating the event and not waiting for other people to make the move? So I'm wondering where you got that from.
Honestly, I just, there's a couple of things. I think by nature, I'm a pretty aggressive person, especially when it came to sports and things like that. I was all in. I'm just a 100% in just about everything I do, and that especially held true with cycling or any other sport that I participated in. Before I got into cycling, I was a typical, American kid, doing all the traditional sports: football, baseball, soccer, hockey. I loved hockey, and approached those sports the same way I did cycling. And yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. It's innate. You're just you're born with that or you're not. And I think I was just kind of born with an aggressive attitude. I'm gonna take the race to everybody else. I'm not gonna let them dictate it. And that's where that kind of came from, I think. But it was really enriched, if you will, I think, by this is interesting because it's in all the way back in 5th grade. I had a teacher that I really looked up to, and really loved him. Still do. He's a great guy. We're great friends. His name is Tommy Matush. Anyway, he was a really progressive guy, and he taught us, a lot of, life methods. One of them was visualization.
Mm-hmm.
And he would literally have us just kind of almost, get into a meditative type state in the classroom. And I just loved that. We did that, I think, weekly. And I just loved it, and I would visualize, what I wanted to accomplish, the next, whether it was in a sporting event or a test or whatever, and the mindset put me in a place where whatever I visualized during those sessions would actually happen. When the sporting event came, not so much the tests though. I never did.
Not the schoolwork, huh?
Not the school part.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, athletically or in an athletic event, it would happen exactly how I visualized things would, and that really held true for cycling. I would visualize how I wanted a race to go, and that's why I would attack. I was going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, where that came to be.
Wow. So, that's a great story. I'd never heard that, I mean, how fortunate you were to have a fifth grade teacher, introducing you to visualization at that age. And,
I know.
And you being able to use it to your advantage. That's, massive props to that guy. So, Tom, I was wondering one thing, maybe something in your career. Well, first of all, I would like to ask this to a lot of athletes, like your favorite memory in your career of cycling, and then after that, like your biggest challenge. So first, maybe like your best memory.
Oh wow, there's so many of them. It's really hard to pick one out. Yeah, gosh, that's a tough one. I don't know why this one kind of comes to mind first, but I mean, of course, having some really high places in some of those national championships of events was, really cool and everything. But when I finally did make it onto the 7-Eleven team, more the amateur team and the pro team, I remember when I wasn't sure if I really fit in and if I really belonged and things like that. And I remember early in the year we went down to the Tour of Texas, and I kind of had a tough go. I wasn't racing well. I don't know if I was intimidated. I don't know if what my deal was, but I had won races just, prior to the Tour of Texas. So I didn't understand why my form didn't seem to be very good. But anyway, the Tour of Texas was kind of our first big event of the year. 7-Eleven and the Southland Corporation is right there in Dallas. So it was a big event for our team. And then, like I said, I was struggling. So I was kind of, feeling really bad about that. But, and then after the Tour of Texas, we all went home for a couple of weeks, and I got a few weeks of training under my belt, and I loved being at home. And granted, part of my problem with the Tour of Texas may have been I was away from home for like 3 months. And I was only, 18 years old, my first time away from home.
I was going to say, you were like only 18 years old and
right.
thrown right into some of the best cyclists in the world. So
exactly. I was away in Sacramento training with Scott McKinley and Frankie Andreu and John Brady and which was awesome. We had so much fun and super cool, but I could have stood for some time at home. So anyway, we went straight from California to Texas and did the race. I didn't do as well as I had hoped in my first big test. And then after the Tour of Texas, I did get to go home back to Madison, Wisconsin, train with my buddies and do all the rides I love doing on my favorite hills and my favorite training routes and things like that. And it really, gave me a psychological boost. And then 2 weeks after the Tour of Texas, went down to the Tour of the Baja Peninsula in Mexico there.
Wow.
And I ended up winning the first stage.
Wow.
which was super exciting for me, of course. You know, I was like, wow, I do belong and I can do it.
Yeah.
But what was super exciting and even, you know, more exciting than winning itself was how excited my teammates were for,
Nice.
you know, for me.
Yeah.
And in particular, Scott McKinley. You know, I'll never forget when he came up to me after the race and saw me and gave me just a huge hug and was like screaming, you know, in joy for me. And
Cool.
that was really cool. I'll probably never forget that moment, because it's when I realized I do fit and I can do this.
Yeah. That's an amazing story. There's this thing in psychology called the imposter syndrome, which is kind of exactly what you're describing. When you level up, when you go to another level, you have it's different. You have these sort of doubts, like, do I really belong here, right?
Yeah.
It's legitimate. And you talk to any top athletes, they talk about the same exact feeling every time they level up. But what's funny is that the athlete experiencing thinks, oh, I'm the only one who's feeling this, right?
Sure.
Right. And so so you were able to, fit in, and it sounds like the validating thing for you was your teammates expressing this genuine sense of happiness for you, right?
Yeah.
And that's awesome. So I'm wondering what advice would you give to a junior cyclist? Obviously, you were very, very talented junior and went through some of the programs like the Olympic Training Center and things like this. And, when you were 14 to 15 years old. And given that, I think we could conclude that junior road cycling is not as strong as it was, compared to our day. So what advice would you give to, say, a young American cyclist, a road cyclist who's really, really clearly talented? What advice would you give them in terms of, I think mainly for setting them up for success, like psychologically and career-wise? Any pointers?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, just have fun. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, and just go have fun. Go out there, do your local races, and chances are you'll enjoy that and want to move up and do more and more races within your area or your region. But again, always keep it fun, and just go out on training rides with your buddies, or more importantly, maybe go out with some guys that are more experienced than you. I used to do that a lot, and you learn from them. Hopefully they're cool and are willing to help you out, and give you some pointers and things like that. But for instance, there's a young guy in my area here. He lives in a small town called Washburn. It's up near Bayfield, which is part of the Gitchagumi Grand Fondo route. Anyway, he's been coming around and training with our group here in Hayward for a couple of years now, and he's in college now. He's I think a freshman at Brevard University. I think that's in North Carolina. Okay. Somewhere in the southeastern corner of the state. And anyway, you can just see this guy's just having a lot of fun with it, and he's getting out there, and he's meeting up with our Tuesday night groups, and comes out there and he dukes it out with us, and I try to give him pointers, and he's a good listener. I can tell he's listening, whereas sometimes I've been around other junior racers that, we're typical kids, right? I was the same way. We all think we know it all already. Well, this guy's special, a little bit more special. He's actually listening and takes things to heart and goes with it. Whereas there's some other kids I've tried to give advice to that are just like, I'm not going to listen to that guy, even though I've been there, done that, and pretty much seen it all. And anybody can take advice from anybody. Like, I know there's I could learn something from a junior. He may have heard it from another coach at wherever, at the Olympic Training Center, or I don't know if they still have those camps at the OTC anymore or not, but you can constantly can be learning from anybody. So always keep your ears open, always listen, and don't close any doors.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. So basically, to summarize, it sounds like really listen, try to take in as much as you can, have an open mind. Don't think that you know it all. Like if you talk to someone, say, hey, why don't you try this style of training, or try this type of interval work? Just being really open to that. And it sounds like the biggest one is just keep the love for the sport, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Just have fun. That's one thing. I still love riding my bike, and I'm turning 50 years old in a couple of weeks, and I still am as enthusiastic about going out and riding my bike as I was when I was 14. I just love it. I just love being out there and feeling the wind in my hair through my helmet now.
Okay, good.
Didn't have to wear helmets when I was 14, but
I remember those days, the no helmet days. Yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, the old hairnet. Remember those?
I do remember. Yeah, we call them, helmets, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, a little strip of leather.
Right. Well, that's great advice for young riders. Can you think of like any like pitfalls? So you mentioned like keeping your love for the sport. Can you think of any kind of like just like a danger area, or some like warning to like a young cyclist? Like if you want to and be like you and still love cycling throughout your whole life, what would you say maybe be like a warning to young cyclists, like avoid blank?
Oh, well, again, putting too much pressure on yourself. There was a time. I mean, I just said I love cycling, and I always did, but there were times when it wasn't as much fun to me, and especially when it became a job. And had to go to Europe, or not had to, I was really wanting to, and entirely looking forward to it. But once I got there, I kind of realized this is truly a job, and it was not as much fun as I had as an amateur, and certainly as a junior, I was having a lot of fun. But I would just I'd say if you put too much pressure on yourself, you tend to have some disappointment then. Of course, you set goals for yourself and things like that, and you don't always achieve them. But if you're just like really banking on something and it doesn't happen, that makes you kind of want to give up, or maybe take on a different sport or something like that. But it's sometimes we all put too much pressure on ourselves.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially at a young age. Just having the emotional maturity to handle failure, right? I mean, and with age, we could probably both say that's like if you get like second or third in a race, it's not failure. Like that's still amazing, right? But for a kid,
absolutely.
Like you say, if they put so much pressure on, say, winning, like a national championship or some big race, and they fall short of that, without the right mindset, they could quit the sport.
Absolutely.
Or develop some really bad self-critical habits. And so I think that's key, what you said about really loving the sport, not taking it, or, definitely taking it seriously, but having fun, because, with cycling nowadays, you have riders going up until, almost age 40 in the pro peloton, which is astounding. So there's a long career ahead for young cyclists. So I think it's great advice is, don't put too much pressure on yourself and have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing I wanted to ask you, Tom, was this is something personally I think that might be missing from a lot of sports, is sort of the exit strategy. So if we look at sports as a career, as something that you're going to be really investing in, we got the front loading end, like the farm system, the nurturing system, the career. What I think is missing from a lot of sports, football, baseball, basketball, cycling, is this notion of like, what's my exit strategy? What's my career afterwards? And like, you are getting involved in this gran fondo and really tapping into your love of the sport. Do you think that's something that needs to be worked on more in a lot of sports is like that exit strategy?
Oh yeah, well, for me personally, I wish I would have had more of an exit strategy. I mean, I think a lot of us are almost disillusioned sometimes that we're gonna make it big and be able to retire at 35 or 40 years old at the end of our cycling career, and that'll be that. But
See, the reason I bring this up is because I think this is I've asked other athletes this too, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of conversation about that. Like when you're in the career, it's basically all chips in, like this is what you're doing, figure out what you want to do after, age 35 later, right?
yeah,
And
right.
it seems unfortunate there's not more conversation about that, even when you're like the peak of your career. Like, why not start setting up your exit strategy then? It's not like
For
you're
sure.
giving up, but like you mentioned, you retired maybe a little on the early side for cycling, and that can be, a challenge for any athlete. So I just wanted to bring that up in terms of, people viewing today. I think that's something that's missing from a lot of sports, is just talking about that whole arc of your career. Of like,
Right.
how do you want to start setting up, your following career? Do you want to give back to it? Do you want to get into as a, coaching? Do you want to do
Right.
completely different? And I remember you ran your own business right after cycling, which is a similar kind of mindset, like really organizing a team of people and things like that. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I wanted to bring that up because I think it's something that needs to be worked on in a lot of sports.
I agree, but we have made big strides in the right direction. I think again in cycling, there now no, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of colleges and universities around the country offer cycling scholarships.
True.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
um, if they would have had that when I was at that age, that would have been great. I still don't know that I would have gone to school. School was tough for me. I'm dyslexic, and I would talk about being intimidated. I was super intimidated about going to a university and being in a lecture hall, and God forbid if the professor would ask me to read something in front of an entire
Right.
lecture hall. It was tough for me. I just didn't have a lot of confidence, and I'd be much more confident now.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, I felt like I don't know what the word is. Almost like I wasn't as good as the other students, and that was challenging. It's the one thing in life I wasn't good at, or I felt like I wasn't good at.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That can be really hard, especially if something like that, which is like dyslexia, is real, and if you don't have a teacher that is on your side for that, you can feel like there's something wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, going back to my Tom Evenreiter, that was a 1 year I really loved school, and just felt like I had a good learning experience for sure. And I wish I would that would have continued on. And yeah, that's my one regret is I wish I had attended school even while I was racing, because a lot of guys did do that.
Sure.
And that would be my biggest advice to juniors now, is have fun with your racing and stuff, but school is the most important thing, and go get an education,
Okay.
and your life will be a whole lot easier in the long run.
I see. Yeah, like you're saying now, there's cycling scholarships, so you can
Absolutely.
take advantage of that.
Great. It's really good.
Makes sense. So, Tom, I wanted to ask you. We're going to wrap things up here in a minute, but I want to ask you about your Gran Fondo, the Gitchigumi Gran Fondo, and your sort of inspiration for starting it, and what it offered someone who wants to participate in the challenge.
Oh gosh, I first did this great ride, way back when I told you I was racing, and just getting out of racing, I should say, but came up here to Hayward on a little vacation and just wanted to go, find a really great ride to do. I was still enjoying training and things like that, and anyway, I stayed, well, I think I was just staying at a resort, but I got hooked up with a guy up here who was kind of the road cycling guru. His name is Dennis Cruz. And he kind of pointed me in the right direction to, go check out this ride up to trying to find your way up to Bayfield, and sort of gave me some ideas on what roads to take and things like that. But anyway, I headed up, and well, it's a 100-mile ride, so you can make a lot of wrong turns in a 100-mile ride. Back then, you didn't have GPS and things like that.
Right.
Most of the roads up here are gravel or sand or dirt of some kind, and so I was doing a lot of back and forth and things like that. But anyway, I was just loving the ride. It was just absolutely beautiful through the Swamigan National Forest, crossing rivers, streams, up and over hills, rolling hills, through some agricultural land, and back into the forest. And, finally, in the end, I come over this gigantic hill, and all I could see was this big expanse of beautiful blue water, and that was Lake Superior. The Native American name is Gitchagumi.
Ah, okay. Didn't know that. Okay.
Hence the Gitchagumi Gran Fondo. But I'll never forget coming over that hill and seeing that big body of blue water, and dropping down into Bayfield, and meeting my family there. And we just had a wonderful day in Bayfield. It's a wonderful little town with a lot of fun things to do. And we hung out for the whole day, just had a blast. And I had always remembered that ride as one of my top 5 favorite rides I had ever done. And then when I came back up to Hayward, I did it again and again and again, and then was taking friends and things on it, and they all loved it too. And somebody on one of the rides was just like, "You got to open this up to the public. You got to make this some sort of a ride or something, a Gran Fondo." And so light bulbs went off, and we were like, "All right, let's think about doing this." And all of a sudden, one thing led to another, and now it's people up here will call it a thing. It's a thing. Yeah.
So Tom, we got to wrap things up here, but I just wanted to say that what I'm really noticing about talking with you is that your love for the sport. And I think that's, if there's a takeaway message from our talk today, I think it's just really loving the sport that you do, be it cycling or whatever it is. And you can just tell that you're passionate about it. And I think that, having your cycling career and still really being in love with the sport, I think it's a great takeaway for all of us. So thanks for being on the podcast today. Before I let you go, I wanted to ask, how can people find out more about the Gitchagumi Gran Fondo?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Mike. I really appreciate it. And you can find information about the Gitchagumi Gran Fondo. We have a website. It's www.gitchagumigranfondo.com. Gosh, I should spell that one out because it's a tough one. It's Gitchagumigranfondo.com.
There you go. There you go. Actually, and I found it by just Googling GGGF ride.
Oh, good. Well, that's what we're hoping for. We want that that shortened, so anybody that just puts in GGGF it'll pop up. That's great. Good news. Thanks for
actually GGGF bike is the one that goes right to your website there, and people
perfect.
Can find out more about enjoying the amazing sport of cycling. So again, thanks Tommy Matush for being on the podcast today, and for all of you out there, love your sport. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Power in Mind, the Sports Psychology Podcast, where we talk to inspiring people in the world of sports and find out more about their mental game. Until next time, be positive, inspire others, and explore your mind.